How great you are, huh? You know, that is exactly the response of this group of people we call the Jews, the children of God. It's the exact response they had to this whole thing that we've been talking about for the last 5 weeks. Not just the giving of the law, but the thing that preceded that. The fact that God would say, I have heard the call of my people. That's how Exodus, this book on exiting out of Egypt, starts. I've heard the call, the cry of my people. And I'm going to do something about it. To which this group of people say, but we haven't done anything to be your people, you know. We haven't kept anything. We haven't said, you know, we've just been crying out to somebody. And that's been the whole point. As we've talked about dancing with the law, that the law wasn't given to us in order for us to have a relationship with God. It was given because we already have a relationship with God. And how great is God to do that? To say that you're mine. Weeks and months before he would say, okay, and this is what it looks like to be mine. These are the pieces I'm going to give you. And when he gives them this law, his hope is that they would dance with it, that it would be something that's joyful for them. That the teaching would kind of be something we desire to hear of how, not just to sort of honor God, but how to live in relationship with him and how to live in relationship with each other. And here's the thing that we said just a couple of weeks ago, that God is not trying to make us good. He's trying to keep us free. Because he has set them free in Egypt. And he set them free by bringing them out. And he set them free as they wandered this desert 40 years. The vast majority of the people that came out die in that 40-year span. But through that process, God is trying to convince them that this is about being free. And isn't that the thing that kind of we need convincing of at times? That we really are free? Because there's so many things that just sort of come along to remind us, you know what? You think you're free, but you're not so free. You're not so free. And God keeps trying to bring us back to this understanding, hey, you are my people. And being free means living as my people, but in the context that you're already there in me. And so it's not about being good, it's about him trying to keep us free. And here's the point that we've been looking at the last 4 weeks, that God is simply saying through the first start of these commandments, I want to be the center of your life. That's what I want to be. You're already in a relationship with me. I'm the one that's brought you out. And because of that, I want you to keep me in that center, because keeping me in that center would help you stay free. So he says, don't have any other gods in front of me. Don't have any gods besides me. That's what it means about keeping me at the center. Don't make any kind of images or idols or things you can kind of say, there's God. He's in that statue. He's in that building, that place. He's in this thing. And so we shrink him down. And God says, don't ever try to shrink me down and compartmentalize, because you can't. And when you do, you're not experiencing freedom. You're experiencing bondage again, because you've controlled again. When he says, don't take my name in vain, it's this idea, don't misuse my name. Don't become a religious person. Don't become my follower and then think, okay, because I'm your follower, I can do what I want to do. I can get away with stuff and use God for my sake. And then last week we looked at this whole idea of God saying, thou shalt take a day off. This great thing. And this reminder that it's God has intentionally put in our weekly cycle this moment to stop and recognize God's provision, to announce and declare our dependence on him, that in 6 days, he's going to give us as much as he gives everybody else in 7 days. That on that 7th day, we step back and say, I'm depending on you, God. I'm going to let you be at the center of my life. God is not calling us to be good. Because the problem with being good is, how good is good enough? Because we all have our standards of goodness, right? Everybody has that layer, and this is what it means to be good, and your good may look different from my good. But what's the standard? And if the standard is God, how good is good enough? So it's not this pull to be good, it's this pull to be free. And we're going to look at that today as we look at the last 6 commandments. But before we go any farther, I want to invite you just to pray with me one more time, all right? Lord, we long for the words of that song to be the soundtrack of our lives. that our lives would speak of just how great of a God you are, because we've experienced it. We've experienced it in spite of the things that don't always work out as we hope or plan. We've experienced it in spite of our past, that for some of us is so tangled up that we just need to start over. We can't untangle these things. To recognize your goodness and the fact that you've called us your children before we've done anything. And so today, I just ask that you would speak into our lives what it means to dance with your law, to dance with honoring our parents, and of not killing or stealing or, taking somebody else's relationship, or lying or wanting to desire, all these kinds of things that will come up. I pray you really would convince us that these words come from a good God, a great God, whose biggest goal is keeping us free and letting us prosper, and letting us grow, and letting us experience what that looks like in our lives. So use this time, Father, for your glory and for our help. In your name, amen. The commandments, as I said, are about keeping us free. And it's about God saying, I want to be at the center of your life. But here's our issue with that. We all think of freedom as being, I'm free to do whatever I want, or free not to do what I don't want to do. How many of you remember those teenage years? And those of you teenagers, you're already in this. I can't wait till I get out of this place. Anybody else there with me? Because I'm gonna be free. I get to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, right? And I can't wait for the day that I'm out under the oppression of this place, right? Then we discover something. That being free isn't quite free, right? To live someplace else, we have to pay rent. To live someplace else, we have to either make our own food, which I have no clue how to do, or have to spend money to buy, go someplace to let somebody else, pay somebody else to make me my food. And my laundry, well, maybe I'll go home and see Mom once a month and just kind of haul in the bags, oh, yes, it's good to be home too, just for the occasion. I'm just popping in, but and you get your paychecks, because you just discover that freedom isn't free to do whatever you want, that you got to earn something, and you get your first paycheck, and you look at it, and you're starting to say, well, I was supposed to make this much money, but what are all these other things, Who's this person named FICA, right? I mean, who has ever met FICA, right? Do you even know? Anybody know what FICA is? I don't know, by the way. Federal, I'd guess federal what? Federal Insurance Corporation Actors. She didn't have to Google it. Or she made it up real quick. One of those two things, right? But you discover, right, that all the stuff that freedom means I can be who I want. Freedom for us means it's centered on me. And I'm free to do what I want to do and how I want to do it. Somebody said the reality is, here's what freedom is. Freedom is that moment between when somebody asks you to do something and that moment you respond to them. That's your moment of freedom. But freedom really is what this whole law thing is about. God wanted us to stay free. And so here's the summary. Here's my summary of the rest, the remaining 6. Everyone you come in contact with is valuable. That's what it's about. It's about God saying, everyone you come in contact with is valuable. In fact, you ought to treat them right. Now, catch this. Oftentimes, people will talk about the commandments and say the first 4 are focused on God. When Jesus asked, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus says, here is the greatest, and I can't really get it down. Jesus can't even get it down to 1, right? He says here, the first one's love God with everything, right? All your heart, all your mind, all your strength, with their whole being. You're supposed to love God completely with everything, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Love others around you as you would love yourself. And oftentimes we make the division. The first 4 goes with loving God completely. The last 6 go with this. But here's the cool thing. The 4th one is actually the transitionary one between the 2. Because it covers both loving God and loving others. We're going to see that in a second. But everyone is valuable. And God is simply saying, listen, I want you to honor me. And I want you to honor everyone around you. And so let's look. Let's look at that commandment we looked at last week. It began this way. Remember that the Sabbath day belongs to me, right? There's that us between God. Then he makes this transition. He says, listen, on that day, no one is to work. Not you, your children, your slaves, your animals, or the foreigners who live in your towns. He's saying, all these other people that are part of your life, even these animals, they're valuable to me. And I want you to honor them. I want you to treat them right. So I'm giving you a day off. Extend it to them. And we talked about how, they kind of always looking for the loopholes, the ways, the foreigners who live in your towns. And so they would go outside of their towns, find foreigners who are from other towns and say, well, they can do my work because they're not literally foreigners who live in my towns, and how crazy that is, but how we all kind of look for those loopholes. But everyone has value. And that's what the Sabbath part is about. Everyone has value. Women, kids, slaves, and foreigners. Now let that sink in for a second, because in the context, this was radical in their day. Because women only had a couple of values. I guess I need to explain them. You've heard the statement, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, kind of thing. That's what a woman was valuable for. Kids, they're only valuable if they can produce. Because you gotta, this was a provision, you gotta, what you grow today, what you reap today, you're gonna eat today. And slaves, foreigners, those immigrants we all talk about. It's always funny in American history, you look at it, people come, then they become Americans, and then it's all these other immigrants that are coming that are messing things up, We are a nation of immigrants. I don't think there's anybody, there may be like one or two here at our church, but there's only like one or two that are from here, right? The rest of us, we are all immigrants. We're all foreigners. But in this context, this was earth-shaking because in their context, men were at the top, and at the top of men were the leaders and the kings. The ones who made the rules. And the ones who make the rules don't have to live by the rules because they're the ones making the rules. And God says, that's not how it's going to be when you're part of my family. There are no special rules, special people. They get breaks in these things. In fact, everybody gets value because when you take a day off, let the rest of them take it out. Let your kids take a day off. Let your slaves, let your animals take it. Let the foreigners, let those immigrants that come in here and take our jobs because they take such cheap pay, right? Let them have a day off too. Treat everybody right. Because you are all, every one of you, made in my image. See, that's the thing that's so easy for us to forget as we see people, right? We look at people and we say, oh, that's a good-looking group, or I like this person, or I don't like that person, or this, And it's so easy to forget that everybody is made in the image of God. It's the thing that got Jesus in trouble so much. They thought they were slamming him when they said, he's a friend of sinners, prostitutes and tax collectors. And they thought that was a slur, and for Jesus, that wasn't a slur. That was reality. Because he saw in them something that's so hard for us at times to see, and that is that everybody's valuable. Because everybody's made in the image of God. So let's pick up. The commandments pick up in the fifth one, and it starts with this honor. And this is another one of those earth-shattering things because, again, God has 10 commandments to fit in this list. Apparently the list is only going to have 10. Do you really throw in, by the way, honor your mom and pop? Is that really the kind of piece you throw in? I mean, would you waste it on that? Aren't there more? Maybe you should say honor your leaders. This is one of the ways I know that this is from God and not from Moses, and wasn't from Mike, because I can tell you if I was writing these things, I would have slipped in, not just honor your parents, honor your leaders, honor your pastor. I got to imagine Moses would have said honor God. I mean, if you know the story, Moses is always the guy in the middle. Talk about being between a rock and a hard place, right? You got these millions of people. They say up to a couple of million people. And they are complaining. You got to feed them. You got to take care of them. And they're complaining. And Moses keeps saying, why are you guys complaining to me? I'm not the one that brought you out here. He's the one, Complain to him. Then God would say to Moses, okay, stand back. I've heard enough complaining. I'm going to wipe him out. And Moses said, no, give him a break, God. And Moses, what do you think that Moses, if he had a hand in this, he would have said, by the way, Caesar, honor father and that's your spiritual father and mother. That means me. But that doesn't happen in this thing. And this is an amazing commandment. We're supposed to honor our fathers and our moms and our dads. And he makes this, in fact, this is so serious for God. It's the only commandment of all the commandments that has a promise hooked with it. He says, listen, honor your father and mother so that you may live a long time in the land the Lord your God is giving you. God is saying, listen, right now you are a big group of people, but you have no land. They didn't. They had just gotten some leaders, got Moses and a few of the other folks. They're on a trip to get this land that God's going to give them. And God is saying to them, listen, when you get into this land, you need to treat your parents with respect. You need to honor them, because if you don't, I put you in the land, and I can take you out of the land. That's right, that's right. And you laugh because you've heard your parents say that probably at some point, or some parent, right? I brought you into this world, and that's right, right? That's where it comes from. And God is serious about this, because he's saying, listen, I know when you get in the land and you get these houses, we looked at this passage last week in Deuteronomy, when you kind of get settled in, you're going to begin to say, hey, you know, life's going on, we're going to get advances, we're going to get a culture, an economy going, and the temptation is going to be to say, my parents, that's old school, that's ancient, we're modern ancients, you know, they're ancient ancients, we're modern ancients, and so we're going to do some things differently. We're not going to value all the stuff that they valued, not going to have all the beliefs that they had. And God says to them, listen, if you ever lose that, I put you in the land, and I can take you out. And if you know much about biblical history, you know that there are times when God does. In fact, just a few generations later, they will leave the faith of their fathers and mothers, and God allows this group, this nation, the Babylonians, to come in and take them back. They've been 400 years in slavery. Now they go into 70 years of slavery, of captivity. So God is serious about this, about honoring. Now, I'm not going to spend a long time on this, but I know that some of us didn't get the parents that we would have picked. You know, if we're voting on them, you know, we got 10 choices, ours are number 12. You know, it just doesn't, I understand that. But that doesn't break what God is talking about here. Honoring doesn't mean that you got the ones that you really wanted to have. But it's about a respect issue. It's about an appreciation for what they could bring to the table, not what they did bring to the table. Because we all know there's no such thing as a perfect parent. None of you kids say amen at this moment. I'm just talking to the adults, all right? Saving some issues for later on today, right? But there is no perfect parent. You ask any parent, even the ones you look at from a distance and go, man, how did they figure that out? Why is that, you know, why does it seem like it goes so smoothly for them? You know, my kids are killing me, and they're just, everything's good. You know, their kids are perfect. You know, we look at it. If you go talk to those parents, I can guarantee you they're going to tell you this. I have made a ton of mistakes. I've told you before. You know, if you were the first child, you were the practice child. And if you were the last child, you were the last child, and you got babied because you were the last child. You were the last one coming down the pike. But that doesn't do away. And again, this is about honoring. This is about treating them with respect, treating them fairly. We get on the next minute. Do not murder. And what do not murder simply means is to honor their lives, to value their lives. And Jesus will take this a step further when he says, not only am I talking about literally taking their lives, I will talk about taking your lives in your relationships and how you speak about other people. To which, if you're honest, you go, really, Jesus? I'm not going to murder anybody. I might feel like it at moments, but I'm not going to do it. But you're going to tell me when I feel like it, why don't I just go ahead and do it? You know, there's that kind of, you know, how we are. Let's take it to the whole, it's easier, let's go to the long end, right? But it's this idea that God is saying, listen, I want you to honor their lives. I want you to value their lives. And valuing their lives is more than just taking their life physically. It's taking their lives in any way we do it. Do not commit adultery. The idea to honor their relationships, to value their relationships. To not screw up and mess up what's going on in somebody else's life so that I can get mine. And again, Jesus will say, you know what? This is not just about literally doing it, it's about thinking about it. Why does Jesus have to go there? You ever think about that? I mean, we have our justifications. We have our loopholes. You know, we say to ourselves, well, God is the one that created beautiful people. So if he created them beautiful, he must want me to look at them and appreciate his beauty, right? And that's all I'm doing is appreciating the beauty over there. And God comes back and saying, listen, it's not about you being good. It's about you being free. And not getting trapped up in all the emotions and all the feelings and all the stuff that begins to go through your mind that end up trapping you, end up bondaging you, end up putting you into slavery because you're thinking, man, if I had the shot, I would, maybe, no, I wouldn't, but, They're not steal. The idea of honoring their stuff, valuing their stuff. And if you've ever had stuff stolen from you, you know the feeling that happens. How many of you have ever had stuff stolen from you? All the time, okay. But if you've ever had somebody break into your house and take stuff, there is a weird feeling to that. Because you go away from feeling like my home is my castle, I am safe and protected here, right, Lester? And then it's all of a sudden like, man, there are just some thin walls and some glass between me and crazy people out there, right? They could come in and take whatever they want, whenever they want. They could be in here right now. What am I going to, you could just kind of go freaky over there. But that's what happens when we lose the freedom and begin to exploit that freedom. When we don't value their stuff, when we don't honor their stuff, and we take that stuff. It says don't testify falsely against your neighbor. The idea of honoring their reputation, of valuing their reputation. And I love the expansion on this because this is not just, again, the thing we have to get away from is saying, this is literally what it says and this is the category, so I can't testify falsely about my neighbor. But that doesn't mean I have to tell everything I know about my neighbor or don't know. You know, you can not live up to this by simply not saying anything. You know, somebody comes along and says, what do you think about Jamie? And I go, sweet lady. Not testifying, Jamie, you are a sweet lady, by the way. But I'm not testifying falsely, I could say, well, literally, I'm not. But what have I done? It's those twists, it's those turns, it's those things, again, that we get caught up in, that bind us again. And when we don't value each other, when we don't honor each other, we're literally becoming slaves to this whole thing. See, God is concerned not only about how you treat others. Here's the great thing about the commandments. He's concerned with how others treat you. See, this isn't a one-way street that I got to do all this stuff. I can't steal their stuff. I can't tell stories about them. I can't do this. I can't do that. But it's about, they're not supposed to be doing that either. It's about all of us living together in a society, in a culture, in a way that honors each other, that values each other, that sees in you not just something that's worthy, but something that's valuable. Seeing in you someone who's made literally in God's image, just as much as I'm made in God's image. And then we get to the 10th commandment. And the 10th commandment is this amazing commandment. I think it's number 10 for a reason. Because I think when you get to number 10, it explains 8 of the other commandments. Maybe even 9 of them. Because why would we have other gods besides God? Back in that culture, it was, this other God over here, they've just knocked off a bunch of countries. So their God must be powerful. So I got my God, but can't hurt to have their God on my side, right? I begin to covet. I begin to desire something that's going on. In fact, this word, do not desire or covet, means to strongly desire, to lust after. It says here, don't desire or covet your neighbor's house. But it's to so want something that it hurts the relationship. That's what coveting does to us. It's why for some of you, you're on the outs with some of your relatives. Maybe you're on the outs with your sister. And the reason you're on the outs with your sister is because of your sister's house. She got the bigger house. She's got all the stuff. And it's why that you have got some distance and don't really want to be around it because it reminds you of what you don't have and how much you wish you had. And it's why that when your sister's husband loses his job, you kind of feel good about it. and why you all of a sudden feel closer to your sister? It's why those things happen. We go, what's that going on? And the reason is that this desire, this lusting has gotten us bound up, has made us into slaves again. It's why when you've gone to share good news with somebody, you got a raise, you got a promotion, you got a new car, and you're all excited, and they go, oh, great, I'm so happy for you. And it's why at times when you hear them tell you that, you think, well, how come it wasn't me? How come I didn't get the promotion? How come I didn't get the chance to at least get that job? Why'd they get a new car? They drive around this junker, 2013 Audi A5. And the amazing thing about this commandment, while this is something you can see in other people, it's also something you cannot see. So he says, listen, don't desire, don't covet, don't lust after your neighbor's house. Not only your neighbor's house, he goes on this list. Don't desire and try to take your neighbor's wife, his male or female servant, his ox, that's like his SUV, right? His donkey, like, your little sports car. Or, and I love the way it finishes, right? Or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. Which you could have just said that in the first place, right? Don't lust after, don't covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. But he goes through a list to remind us again that there's lots of things that pull us and attract us. Lots of things that irk us. I mean, how many times have we seen somebody get something and we think, how can they afford that, right? I mean, I know how much, at least I think I know how much they make, and how come they're asking for help over here and they're spending all their money over there, We get all trapped up in this whole idea about desiring and longing and wishing and wanting. And the amazing thing about this 10th commandment is that we're not just accountable to God for how we behave, we're accountable to God for what we think. And again, this is not God's desire to try to make us good. This is God's desire for you and I, not you and I, to stay free. Because you go through this list, those are all things that'll change your freedom. You murder somebody, literally, you're probably not going to be free, right? You steal something, you get caught, you're not going to be free. But you go even past, you go to when Jesus, and that's what Jesus' whole point. Jesus is the one who takes the 10th commandment and applies it to all the other commandments when he says, listen, murder, you've heard this, but I'm going to tell you, you get mad, you call somebody, you fool, you idiot, you're in trouble. You getting somebody question their relationship with God, they're just off, they're heretics, be careful. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I tell you, if you go, oh, baby, and think, or just even think that in your head, I can look, but I can't touch, that's all good. Any of that kind of stuff, Jesus says, you've lost your freedom. And the whole expansion of all these other commandments, I think applies. Jesus only covers 2, but I don't think he means those are the only 2 that get expanded. I think he says all of them get expanded. And his point is simply this. Don't read the list of things as a list of things that I just got, check the letters, period. As long as I just do that, I'm okay. His point is, read the list and know that you aren't okay. And those are things that will pull you in, and things that try to entrap you. And my goal is to keep you free. It's not to make you good. Because there are good people, who in here and in here aren't very good. But we're just really good about putting on this front. Aren't we? And so it isn't about the goodness, it's about the freedom part of it. See, God, here's his invitation. I want you to honor me. I want you to trust me as part of that, value me. I want you to honor others. And I want you to honor yourself. I want you to stay free. And you do that not just simply by thinking about all the stuff I got to do. You simply do that by depending on me, by trusting me for these things. See, these 10 were given to keep free people free. And I keep saying that because I think we have a hard time really believing that. And I've said this the last couple weeks. God knows. He knows that within us, within you and within me, is this bent that makes us look for loopholes. You can say amen, that. We're all in good company here. We're all friends, right? Anybody else ever look for loopholes? You know, the bargains. Can I double down on the coupons? Can I take the ad and say, but this is what it says in the ad? Or try to manipulate things to our advantage? I know none of you do that. None of you would ever manipulate things, right? And God knows that about us. He knows that within us is this bent. In the process, when we do that, we unfree ourselves. I love how Paul wraps up this. He captures this whole idea in Galatians chapter 5 when he says, listen, folks, Christ, Jesus, has freed us, past tense, has freed us so that we may enjoy the benefits of freedom. The benefits of it. You were indeed called to be free, brothers and sisters. Don't turn this freedom into an excuse for your corrupt nature to express itself. Because Paul knows just what Jesus knows, which God knows. There's that bent in all of us. To hit the good and kind of get it all twisted up. He says, don't use it as an excuse, this freedom. Rather, serve each other through love. In other words, this idea of honoring people, this idea of valuing people and the things that they have. Seeing each other as God sees us. 2 Peter will simply say, listen, you are a slave to whatever controls you. For some of us, that is our life text. Because we have become slaves because something controls us. It's got a hold of us. And you know exactly what it is. And this whole idea of freedom, and it's so easy. I know what it is, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to really put my nose down. I'm really going to follow what God says. I'm going to focus on doing the right stuff. And God says, no, you've missed the point. Don't focus on doing the right stuff. That's good. But that's not the point. What you need to focus on is the fact that you are free. That stuff doesn't have to control you. It controls you because you've given it the power to control you, forgetting that He has more power than that thing in your life. How great thou art. To break not only His chains, but to call us His children before we did anything. In fact, weeks before they would even have a chance to sort of show an act of trust in Him by killing this animal, which was normal for them. Don't freak out on that part. It's like opening a can of soup. Dumping some pasta in hot water. That's what killing an animal back then was for them. But the act was to take some of the blood from that animal and put it on the doorpost of their doors. Was there anything special in that blood? No, it was just animal blood. But it was a step that God said, you're already my people, but I just want you to trust me, because in trusting me, I'm going to show you again how much I'm going to protect you, how much I'm going to come through for you. And I want you to be free, and I'm going to make you free, and then I want you to stay free. And that's the whole reason that months later, a couple of months later, God comes along and says, okay, now that you're my people, now that you have kind of seen what I can do, that you're dependent on me, now you need to know how to live free. What are the pieces that'll be part of that? It reminds you of this great statement that's down in the Korean War Memorial. That freedom is never free. There's a cost to it. And the good news for you and for me is that somebody's already paid that price and cost. And next week we're going to celebrate that. We're going to have communion, this idea of sharing and reminding ourselves again of what Jesus did on a cross for us. But while freedom is never free, freedom is great to have and to experience. And as we wind this series down today, and we'll tell you kind of a final step next week, I simply want to put it in front of you again. The opportunity to see the commandments in a different way and to see God in a different way. To put God in his rightful place as your Father, as someone you already have a relationship with. To do some step of dependence, of trust towards him. But to see the rules as not things to try to make us good and make us stand out, except in a sense that they stand out because we're free people. And so I don't need to take your stuff. I don't need to desire your stuff. I don't need to work stuff to my favor. Because I've already got the best favor ever. I'm his. And he's mine. So with that thought in mind, I invite you to take that Connect card that Pastor Jason talked about at the very beginning. It's on a chair around you. I hope you take it out, kind of fill in your name and stuff. There's a place in the back to add some prayer stuff. If you're a guest for the first time, please put some information down there. But there's some next steps. And every week we put this invitation out to people. Here's 3 possible next steps. Maybe your next step is the thing that we've been talking about every week, and that is to rethink how I see God's commandments. That's been my goal, and I hope I at least made you rethink it. Maybe your next step today is to recognize the value of those around me and begin to live that way. Begin to live in a way that values them. Maybe your next step today is accept that freedom is not free. There is a cost and there's a struggle to stay free. That's why over and over, Paul will write, Peter will write, telling, listen, folks, you're free, you're free, you're free, you're free, you're free. Do you know why? Because we forget we're free. And God doesn't want us to forget that we're free.